Congressman Drew Cain has long carried the burden of being a man with too many identities and too many unfinished battles, but the recent turn of events in Port Charles has pushed him into a corner few could have imagined. Once regarded as a hero, Drew now stands accused, by both circumstance and his own reckless choices, of becoming one of the most dangerous figures in the city. His fall has been methodical, not explosive, and that slow burn descent is precisely what makes his looming downfall inevitable. The residents of Port Charles are circling him, and the whispers of betrayal, vengeance, and punishment grow louder with each passing day. What began as suspicion has now spiraled into open hostility, and even those closest to him, Alexis, Nina, Carly, and Curtis, have made their threats known. The question that lingers is not whether Drew will face retribution, but how, and by whose hand. Drew's transformation into a darker figure has been a long time in the making. When he first entered the orbit of General Hospital, his identity crisis defined him, believing he was Jason Morgan before learning he was Jason's twin. He was a man stripped of his own past but given a second chance to carve out a life with honor, a man who once risked his life to save Port Charles from villains like Victor Cassadine. He had friends, he had allies, and for a time, he even had respect. But the Drew of today bears little resemblance to that man. He is cold, calculating, and ambitious in ways that alienate those he once stood beside. The bomb-defusing hero has been replaced by a manipulative politician whose choices have left wounds across the city. Each betrayal, each calculated move, has layered upon the last until Port Charles has begun to see him not as a protector, but as a threat. The comparisons to other soaps are unavoidable, with fans speculating that Drew's path could mirror the shocking downfall of other characters like E.J. DiMera on Days of Our Lives, who was gunned down in a storyline that electrified viewers. It would be easy, perhaps too easy, for General Hospital to build toward a "who shot Drew" scenario, scattering a long list of suspects in his wake. After all, nearly every major player in town now has a reason to want him gone. Alexis feels betrayed by his ruthless disregard for justice, Carly resents the way his power plays have endangered her family, Nina's anger boils from personal grievances tied to his lies, and Curtis feels the sting of betrayal from a man he once called brother. The list doesn't end there. Sonny, already wary of Drew's entanglements, has reason to see him silenced. Yet the idea of a gunman waiting in the shadows might be too predictable. General Hospital thrives on subverting expectations, and Drew's undoing may be more cunning than a bullet. The true danger lies not in a fiery shootout, but in the world of secrets and toxins woven into the backdrop of deception cosmetics. What began as a glamorous storyline quickly twisted into something sinister when Maxie became the unexpected victim. On the eve of a Home and Heart broadcast, she applied a tub of deceptions, miracle cream, to demonstrate its power, only to collapse on air, slipping into a coma. The implication of sabotage could not be ignored, and speculation turned to the scheming Sidwell. Known for his manipulative dealings, Sidwell has no qualms about using poison, pressure, or manipulation to dispose of anyone who gets in his way. Recently, he confided to his son Marco that Drew had become a liability, an unstable force whose recklessness threatened to unravel Sidwell's carefully spun plots. Marco's loyalty wavered, betraying his father's secrets to Drew, and in doing so he painted a target on Drew's back. For Sidwell, this is more than business, it is survival, and Drew's elimination would solve more than one problem. Deception's poisoned products may not just be a one-time scare. They could serve as the perfect weapon to rid Port Charles of Congressman Cain without firing a shot. What better irony than to watch Drew, who once represented hope and strength, fall victim to vanity and manipulation through a product meant to symbolize beauty? The idea of Drew being silenced by a cream or serum, of all things, ties together the glamour and danger that General Hospital so often thrives on. Poison does not simply kill, it lingers, confuses, and terrifies, creating suspicion and paranoia long after its first strike. For a character who has made enemies of so many, the ambiguity of poison provides an ideal narrative. Was it Sidwell? Was it Nina, exacting revenge with a quiet hand? Was it Carly, desperate to save her family from Drew's destructive orbit? Or was it someone entirely unexpected, slipping past suspicion in the chaos? Beyond Sidwell and deception, Drew's collapse could signal the unraveling of Port Charles itself. A poisoning would ignite a web of investigations, with Anna and Jordan forced to determine whether Drew's fall was an accident, a corporate scandal, or an assassination. Each suspect would face interrogation, and old alliances would fracture under the weight of mistrust. Maxie's own condition would resurface, tying her coma to Drew's fate, suggesting a broader conspiracy that could implicate Deception's entire leadership team. Brooke, Lynn, Lucy, and Sasha could find themselves under scrutiny, while Valentine, never far from secrets, might find his hand forced. Every thread leads back to Drew, but the connections radiate outward, touching almost every corner of the canvas. In the process, General Hospital could build a storyline not just about Drew's fate, but about the fragile foundations of trust and ambition that define Port Charles. Of course, Drew's enemies may not wait for poison to run its course. A bullet, a staged accident, or a calculated betrayal still remains on the table. But if General Hospital seeks to avoid predictability, the creative path lies in psychological and chemical warfare rather than blunt violence. Poison is intimate, secretive, and cruel, qualities that mirror Drew's own recent behavior. It allows the show to explore not just the act of murder, but the ripple effects of suspicion, guilt, and paranoia. A shooting can be explained in an instant, a poisoning demands weeks, even months, of questions, tests, and confrontations. It feeds into soap opera's greatest strength, slow-burning tension that keeps audiences on edge, desperate for the next reveal. The man who once risked his life to save Port Charles now finds himself ensnared in its deadliest plots, a tragic irony that underscores just how far he has fallen. Drew Cain's story is no longer about redemption, it is about reckoning. Whether by bullet, poison, or betrayal, the people of Port Charles are closing in, and his enemies are united by one shared belief: Drew's reign must end. The only uncertainty that remains is how General Hospital will deliver its final, devastating blow. Do you want me to expand this even further, maybe by adding detailed suspect profiles: Alexis, Carly, Nina, Curtis, Sidwell, Sonny, and how each could realistically orchestrate Drew's downfall, so the article reaches a full 10,000 plus characters?